Hello and welcome to another review. Now, I'm a big fan of Doctor Who vampire stories. I love The State of Decay and I adore Project Twilight. So I've experienced vampires on TV and on audio. So since Halloween's coming, I thought maybe I should read a Doctor Who vampire story in book form. So that's exactly what I did. Now, I could have picked Blood Harvest. Or I could have picked Vampire Science, arguably the first story in the 8th Doctor Adventures. Instead, I picked Goth Opera, where we see the 5th Doctor battle vampires, and it's written by Paul Cornell. What could possibly go wrong? So, it's a presentation of Goth Opera. I have to say, I love this book cover. We've got the lovely painted image of the 5th Doctor there with this night sky. We've got Vampire Nyssa there, which looks absolutely creepy. Look at that, it's terrifying. Now, there was a sort of a original version of this cover done where we had all blood on Nyssa's top, but that wasn't used, and I put an image on the screen now. So W.H. Smith thought, oh, we're not using that because that's just a bit too gory, and we've just got a little bit of blood splattered there. Then we've got Castle Yarvin in the lovely night sky there. So yeah, very nice. Goth Opera, Paul Cornell. The spine and the back, so if you want to know more about Goth Opera, then you can do. The count for this book is 238 pages, so it is a pretty short Doctor Who book. It is just under your standard So Goth Opera is the first Virgin missing adventure, and it's quite fitting that it was the first Virgin missing adventure I read. And I will say Goth Opera is a perfect story to kick off this new era of books, the Virgin Missing Adventures, as the Virgin books are regarded being more adult in some of the content in the books, as the Virgin books were made for fans, and of course the time the Virgin Missing Adventures would come around, fans were teenagers and adults, meaning you're able to do a bit more nitty gritty things than what you could have done on screen. So doing a vampire story is a perfect way to show that these books aren't for kids. And I'm not saying that this book is a total bloodbath, but the story does have a few gruesome moments, what I will talk about later. And you do have the odd swear words within this book, and I do feel Paul Cornell handled those factors extremely well with not overdoing it. So Goth Opera is a sequel to Blood Harvest, written by Terrance Dicks. Now, me personally, I haven't read Blood Harvest, though I know sort of the basic outline of the story, and I know the events will happen within Blood Harvest. And I feel like you can still enjoy Goth Opera without reading Blood Harvest. Though Chapter 6 might make you go, hang on a minute, I feel like you'll still perfectly understand what Goth Opera is trying to get at, as this book may be a sequel, but it is a prequel for the 5th Doctor, and putting one of the most human and gentle Doctors in this story is a great contrast to the tone and theme of this book. Now, if you're going to read this book, now is the time, as this book is perfect reading at night, as this book has this autumny, wintry feel which the book sets up, especially at the beginning. And I might as well talk about the setting, as this book does have a few main settings. So we do get a first glimpse of the TARDIS crew in Tasmania. I know, hardly a location you would expect a Gothic horror story to be set in. And personally, it does lose that cold, harsh atmosphere what was built up within the prologue. And personally, I quite enjoyed the Tasmanian section. I know that a lot of people are like, what's the point of this section? But I feel like it really establishes the Doctor, Tegan and Nyssa. And personally, one of the key plot points happens in Tasmania, and personally, I treat the Tasmania section like the calm before the storm. Granted, the setting in Tasmania does nothing for the actual story, and you could set that bit in England. But then you would lose the Doctor taking the mick, saying to Tegan, you Australians are meant to like cricket. But I guess the Tasmanian sort of side of the story does sound like a very JNT idea, and it does fit into sort of the Arc of Infinity side of sort of season 19, because that's where the story is set. But predominantly the story is set in Manchester, which is a nice change as it isn't London. And again, not exactly the most obvious place to set a Gothic horror story, but Paul Cornell really sets up this cold, harsh atmosphere with people going missing and fear on the streets of Manchester at night time. So when the Doctor and the crew arrive in Manchester, it does reflect that sort of tonal change within the story. In the most Gothic horror setting in the story, Castle Yarvin, the vampires' sort of abode. Yeah, a classic vampires location, a castle. But this isn't your bog standard castle. Oh no, it's a very clever reveal of what the castle actually is, which I'm not actually going to spoil because it is a very nice little twist, and it certainly adds to the gothic horror vibe. Talking of horror, let's get on to the creepy and gruesome stuff because, hey, this is a Halloween special video. So if you're a person of a faint heart, then you might want to give this book a miss. So we have your classic sort of horror traits like resurrection, with resurrecting Yarvin and with him being buried alive but in absolutely agony, because it does play on the classic vampire traits like a silver crucifix. And I will say, Nyssa being attacked by a demonic baby. It's not a spoiler, Nyssa becomes a vampire. And I will say this, that is one of the most creepiest and for me, absolutely brutal and quite unsettling to read, that attack scene when Nyssa's being attacked by this demonic baby. It's just really unsettling and quite unnerving when you're reading it, because it is just a really brutal and savage scene within the book, and personally I like it, but it is quite an unsettling read, I will be honest. We also have somebody ripping their own head off, and we have vampires feeding on humans within the castle, and you have humans screaming in agony, and the vampires think that that is part of the festivities, and we have blood dripping from the walls, and we have this whole massacre of people exploding on this whole sort of field from the vampires with these sort of explosive gas canisters, and people just spontaneously combusting from it, and that leaves the Doctor really scarred. And when the vampires are hunting and attacking, it's just brilliant. You know, Paul Cornell just doesn't hold back on the gore, so it certainly fits this whole ballsy new era for classic. So on to characters. The characterizations within this book is brilliant. Each character essentially has their own page to themselves, which I like. So the Doctor, the way we're introduced to the Doctor in this book is playing cricket. I can't think of a better way of introducing the Fifth Doctor, and we find out that he writes for a cricket magazine, so it's just brilliant. And Paul Cornell really plays on that youthful English gent side of him, drinking tea and being more of a quirky side to the Fifth Doctor. So he's more of the sort of the Big Finish Fifth Doctor, and if you know me, I adore the Fifth Doctor on Big Finish. We do get some funny moments like the Fifth Doctor saying we best start going to Italian restaurants because of garlic bread. But the story you wouldn't think would fit the Fifth Doctor, as this story is quite a brutal story, and putting this calm and quite tame Doctor within it. And there is a quite an interesting line what Ruth says, that she was expecting a more exciting incarnation. So that kind of sets up the theme that the Fifth Doctor is kind of a very placid Doctor. You know, Ruth was hoping for a more interesting Doctor. But back to the Fifth Doctor. When he finds out what has happened to Nyssa, with Nyssa transforming into a vampire, we see his youthful exterior change and become old. The Fifth Doctor had that great quality, but within a moment, like the 11th Doctor, he would instantly age. And Paul Cornell just beautifully described that, saying that the universe is resting on his shoulders. And I just think that's brilliant. He just becomes determined to save Nyssa. With him saying, I've already lost one companion in this incarnation, and I'm not going to lose another. Honestly, the Fifth Doctor is polite, reserved, and quite prone to inaction when he's indecisive, and is constantly feeling guilty about Nyssa's transformation. And yet he hides a much stronger person inside. Well written, and I can just picture Davison in this story uttering this dialogue. Nyssa, if you're a fan of Nyssa, you need this book in your life, as Nyssa probably has the best storyline of the book, turning this sweet, innocent character into a vampire, and her trying to deal and come to terms with that is just utterly thought-provoking. It's one of my favourite sequences within the book occurs inside the TARDIS, when Nyssa finally succumbs to her bloodlust, with her trying to attack Tegan in her room. The feeling of the safety within the TARDIS and the safety from Nyssa, and just both are violated in this fantastic sequence while Nyssa is doing this such a terrible thing to Tegan. She is both inwardly and outwardly doesn't want to do them, and she is very much being driven by this uncontrollable instinct of a vampire, and it's just terrifying. Honestly, from sweet old Nyssa at the beginning of the book to this vampire Nyssa in the transformation process is just well done. And at the beginning of the book we have her talking about Traken, so we get more expansion on that, which I really like, because obviously the TV series didn't really explore Nyssa talking about Traken. And I like that she's thinking of when she next encounters the Master, she will be able to coax her father out, and her father will fight the Master's mind, and Tremas will become whole again. So I really do like that. And the story, like I said, is just great expansion. Tegan, again, a great character expansion as we see her haunted by Vamara from Snake Dance. And by the way, we're introduced to Tegan in a classic way. She's moaning, classic Tegan, I know. And her and the Doctor just make for a great team within this story. Just seeing her and the Doctor work together to try and save Nyssa and find out where Nyssa is brilliant, and trying to get down to the mystery of this whole vampire going on. It is just brilliant. And another thing is we explore Tegan's thoughts. You know, she's very reflective within the story. You know, behind this gutsy, arrogant and loudmouth character, you know, there is this vulnerable character which Paul Cornell really does exploit, you know, showing her, you know, showing that side to her once she's been attacked by the vampires. It is just utterly brilliant. A character I believe is from Blood Harvest, and my god, she is a nutter. You know, sacrificing a regeneration to resurrect Yarvin, with, you know, this book really exploring her past, with her essentially being sort of the Doctor's boyfriend, and then she turned into this bitter character when the Doctor left her on Gallifrey. So the confrontation she has with the Doctor is utterly electric, and her plot thread of the book is another interesting aspect, and does explain her backstory of what made her the person she is now, in Chapter 6 being great for her. Right, the vampires. The best way to describe them is they're just utterly horrible. You know, with them describing humans as cattle, and straight away within this book we're exploring their mythology, that they can only turn 3 people into vampires. And we do have quite an odd bunch of vampires at the start. We have this Yorkshire vampire and a sort of Michael Caine vampire. But we do have the main vampire, the messiah of the vampires, Yarvin, who is the last survivor of the East Space vampire sort of thing, and he's the last pure vampire who came off the Great Vampire. So that's a nice little nod to the State of Decay. And Yarvin's very much a smooth, calculative leader, and the best way I can describe him is imagine Delgado's master as a vampire, and you get Yarvin, and pairing with Ruth, it makes her a very interesting combination. And on the other side we have this young vampire couple, you know, with Jake and Madeline, who provide a very interesting insight to the tragedies of vampirism. And they have, the vampires themselves have sort of 2 plans. We have obviously the bog standard plan, with them trying to make night forever so they can hunt and sort of feast forever, with eternal darkness. And we do have the plot point with the Doctor, which doesn't really get kicking until sort of around the last 50 pages of the book. Another thing what I love about this book is the whole vampire war. That is explored extremely well within this book, with us learning more about the war between Rassilon and the Great Vampire, and us finding out Rassilon is a vampire himself, and the Time Lords say they sort of share the same genes, like 98%, something like that. So that is a very cool aspect of the book, which I just thoroughly enjoyed reading that aspect of the book. So what are my overall thoughts on Goth Opera? Well, Goth Opera is everything a missing adventure should be, with it paying homage to the classic series while taking it in a new direction that the classic series could never have done on screen. For example, the gore. The pacing of the book is just about right. It does move at a steady pace, with it really ramping up when it needs to. Though I did find the prologue to drag a bit, but the ending, I will say, is a really satisfying conclusion. And we do have many fan-pleasing moments, you know, referencing Earth as Ravolox. You know, Ruth and Yarvin travelling to the future to see Hemivores. We have Ruth name-dropping Mortimus, who is the Time Meddler, the meddling monk. And the whole entire of Chapter 6, with Romana being chased by Drashigs and the random appearance of Glitz and Dibber. But overall, I found it a very engrossing read, with excellent characterizations and a perfect read for this time of year. So overall, I'm going to give Goth Opera a 9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to explore more Virgin Missing Adventures, because if it's as good as this, I know that the Virgin Missing Adventures are going to be some of my favourite books, and certainly it's the best 5th Doctor book I read. It's the only 5th Doctor book I read, and I don't know if anything can beat it, because I absolutely adore it. 5th Doctor and Vampires, I love it. The characterisation for Nyssa is just superb. I just love this book to bits. But yeah, like I said, Goth Opera gets a 9 out of 10. A brilliant book, and a book you can track down. It's not that hard to find. I got this for £4 last year, and it's relatively the same price. It's not a rare book to get, and it's a pretty easy book to get, so if you want to get it, you can do. It is marvellous, and I highly recommend you do so. So that concludes this book review. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope to do some more book reviews in the future. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. So, bye bye.